It is time for another clean out my fridge video. So you may be looking at my fridge and thinking, why does your fridge need to be cleaned out? There's a lot of stuff in it. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff in it, but most of the stuff, actually, believe it or not, is condiments or drinks. Like there's sodas and a bunch of homemade jams, and this is donut dough that I have resting. I'm gonna make donuts later today. The bottom shelf is pretty much all drinks and condiments, except for this can of olives. Everything else is drinks and condiments. Everything in this door is condiments and fizzy water drinks. So really, the only like non-drinks and condiments are this shelf here and this shelf down there, and then a little bit here and there. But anyway, this homemade chicken broth, I need to use it or freeze it. This is half of a 28-ounce can of tomatoes. I used half of it in a recipe. It only called for 14 ounces, so I was left with half a can left over. This is some creme fraiche. I got it for a recipe like a week ago, and I have no plans for the rest of it, and I've been kind of using it a little bit here and there, but to no avail. I really need to use up the rest of this soon before it goes bad. This is some homemade tortilla dough. It lasts a few days in the fridge, and this is day number 2. These are some beans. They were dried, and then I cooked them. And these sweet peppers are my freshest produce right now, and if I don't use them in probably a few days, they're going to start going bad. Some cilantro. I got it for another recipe, and look at all that I have left over. Lime. Jalapenos. And I like to always have onions on hand, but I have many onions. And I like to also always have carrots and potatoes on hand, so that's no biggie. But I do have a lot of onions. It's like every time I go to the store, I buy onions because I might be out of them soon, and then I wind up having a bunch of onions, so onion. And I also, you can't really see it because it's in a plastic bag, but there's bacon in here. Extra bacon I got at the butcher. There's like 3 extra slices with no plans. There, now there is significantly less stuff in my fridge. So I've got homemade tortilla dough, bacon, onion, creme fraiche, a lime, jalapenos and sweet peppers, cilantro, some old cheddar cheese that was previously frozen because I bought it in bulk, half a giant can of tomatoes, a cup of homemade chicken broth, and some beans. What am I gonna make with all of this? Alright, if you guessed, well, you know what? It's probably in the title of this video, so I already gave it away. I'm making Spanish rice, and I'm gonna eat it with some refried beans and some homemade flour tortillas, as well as some toppings. So I've turned the pan on already, and I have 2 pieces of diced bacon, half a cup of diced onion, and you're supposed to saute it in a tablespoon of oil, but I have extra bacon fat. I always keep it rendered in mugs in my fridge for later use. Free oil! Anyway, I'm just amping up the bacon flavor by just adding bacon fat instead of oil. So whenever a recipe calls for green bell pepper, cooked green bell pepper is disgusting. I like it raw, but cooked it's gross. So I always replace it with sweet pepper and jalapeno, or all jalapeno. I had both, so I used both. A little salt to help it along, and a couple cloves of minced garlic. The recipe called for 1, but anytime a recipe calls for 1 clove of garlic, add at least 2. That is the rule. Now the onions are getting what is called translucent. And that means they're shiny and they're not so white anymore. You can kind of start seeing through them. And all the veggies are softening and the bacon is baconing, releasing its lovely fat into this. So it's time to add the rice. I am also, you cannot see this because I don't feel like moving my camera, but I am also lighting the oven to 350. Because we are, in fact, going to bake this rice. So confession, this is like my 2nd time ever making Spanish rice. Like, I've made rice dishes like this, similar to this, many, many, many times before. I used to make this a lot, like 10 years ago, this kind of dish. And I didn't put bacon in it. Sometimes I put sausage in it. Sometimes, actually, usually, I would put no meat in it at all. And yeah, if you just leave out the meat and use vegetable broth instead of chicken broth, it can totally be vegan, and it tastes good that way too. So you want to stir stir, 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 stir. Not let the rice stick and not let the rice burn. When toasting the rice, it's giving it flavor, and then it also helps the grains. I do believe, do not quote me on this, I'm not a chef, but I do believe that this step also helps the grains stay a little more separate. More than anything else, though, it gives the rice flavor because you're toasting it. At this point, I'm also going to add the spices. Not very many spices, surprisingly enough. I would usually add a lot more than this. It's just a teaspoon of paprika, a half teaspoon of black pepper, and about a quarter teaspoon of salt. You definitely want paprika in there because it's what will help give it the nice red color. That plus the tomatoes, which we're about to add. But yeah, when I make this kind of dish, I'm following a recipe right now, by the way, in the joy of cooking. But when I usually make a dish like this, and I think I have a video from a long time ago of me making something like this, and I think I used linguiça in that video. But yeah, I usually would like to, if I had the spices, put in spices like cumin and coriander and chili and Mexican oregano even. Supposed to add a cup of drained tomatoes. You're supposed to bring the chicken broth in and then bring the whole thing to a boil, but I heated up the chicken broth first, so it should come to the boil pretty quickly. So once this does come to the boil, it looks like it's already almost there. I'm going to cover it and put it in the oven and bake it for 25 minutes. And in theory, it will be done. Again, this is my second time ever making this, so who knows? Looks really pretty. Nice and red. There we go. Now we're starting to boil. And you are in my oven. And behold its Spanishy, ricey goodness. So you do want to fluff it with a fork. It's very perfectly done. I just had a kernel of rice to test it. Ta-da! And behold its thrifty, wonderful goodness. So I have here the Spanish rice that I just made, a couple flour tortillas that I made. Check out my video, if it's not already out now, it will be very soon, on how to make flour tortillas from scratch for super cheap, and the refried beans I made, along with some of that creme fraiche I had to get rid of, and the lime and the cilantro. And I can't wait to tuck into this.